Okay. Hi. How many times do we have to do it? Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm so glad you're here, and welcome everybody who's online. I'm going to stay out of the line of view here as much as possible so you can see our authors. If you're wondering, you signed up for something with 3 authors, and you see 2. There will be a third. May Cobb will be joining us in a little bit. She had a scheduled kerfuffle, and so we'll see her hopefully around 7:30. Um, So, if I don't know you, my name is Jane Estes, and I'm the general manager here at Larkin Owl Booksellers. And first of all, thank you for wearing your masks. We keep thinking we're almost there, and now we keep having to roll it back. So we appreciate all of you in the room taking care of everybody's safety. So I'm the co-founder of this bookstore with 9 other women, and it's sort of my fault. I was doing some work with the Writers League of Texas, which I want to talk to y'all about later. Um, and we would have author events here in Georgetown, and I would ask authors, would you come up and do in Georgetown what you do at Book People, but at somebody's house with dessert and wine? And in almost 5 years, nobody said no. So we had these great parties at other people's homes because we didn't have a bookstore. And then one day I realized we were the people we were waiting for. So here's the bookstore. So if you haven't been here before, welcome, welcome. Some of you are regulars, and we appreciate y'all for showing up. And Cullen is over here to take drink orders. Sorry, people virtually, you're missing out on that. But we're going to have a great evening. We have a wonderful community here in Georgetown. And in the before times, as we like to call them, we would have fairly large events in the store. And we just had to get to a point where we were comfortable, having smaller events, and we were worried that authors would say no to that. But they didn't. Again, nobody said no. So we love that about y'all. Let me tell you a little bit about these 2 people, and we'll introduce May when she jumps on in a minute. James Wade is an award-winning fiction author with 20 short stories published in various literary journals and magazines. His debut novel, All Things Left Wild, was released June 16th, 2020 from Blackstone Publishing. They have the best hookups, by the way. They really do. His second novel, Rivers Sing Out, also from Blackstone, was released in June 8th of 2021. You have 6 other novels coming out? That's amazing. He spent 5 years as a journalist before serving as a legislative director at the Texas State Capitol during the 83rd legislative session, and he worked as a lobbyist on behalf of water conservation, in Texas. He lives in the Texas Hill Country with his wife and daughter, and you're an active member of the Writers League of Texas. And you can find his work in anthologies like The Bitter Oleander in Skylark Review, Intrinsic Magazine, Bartleby. I don't know all of these. I know some of them. You don't want to? He doesn't want me to read all of them.
You don't have to.
It's a lot. I'll just tell you that. And if you want, it's on his website if you want to know where. Okay, and then Stacey Swann is here with us today. Her debut novel, Olympus, Texas, from Doubleday, was a Good Morning America Book Club selection. Yay, Stacey. An Indie Next pick, and was longlisted for the Center for Fiction First Novel Prize. She holds an MFA from the fabulous Texas State University. That's a great program if anybody doesn't know about it. And was a Stegner Fellow at Stanford University. Her writing has appeared in LitHub, Electric Literature, Texas Highways, Epoch, and other journals. And she splits her time between Austin and Lampasas. People on virtual, if you can't hear us, put it in the chat and we'll help you, okay? All right. Welcome, you guys. Welcome. We're so happy you're here. Stacey, you've been here before as a guest, as a shopper. And James, we're so happy to meet you.
I'm happy to meet y'all in person. This bookstore is stunning, to say the least. This is beautiful.
Thank you. We're very proud, and we are even prouder that we serve a function in the community, and we love our customers. So I would like for y'all to start and talk about your book. So Stacey, yours has a very special premise or inspiration or framework. So can you tell everybody a little bit about Olympus, Texas, and how that came to be?
Sure. So I had just this thought as I was driving one day. And I think I've been having conversations with people about Texas who are not originally from Texas. And they were like, man, everybody really buys into the mythology of Texas if you're born here, where like everything is larger than life, all these really big personalities. And I was like, yes, that is true. And I felt like, oh, that's a really fun thing to combine with Greek mythology, right? Which is really big personalities. And so I thought, like, what if I tried to take those kind of like the gods, but move them into rural Texas and make them just regular humans without any special powers, without any immortality. And so that's where the book idea came from. And then after I was running for a while and developing the characters, I realized, oh, actually what I'm writing is just a novel about a dysfunctional family, which shouldn't have surprised me because I love those novels. I love novels about small towns and novels about dysfunctional families. So it's not surprising. But that's the basic premise, and they're all in East Texas, which is basically where I grew up. I grew up in Sealy, Texas, which is right outside of Houston, on I-10, and so that's pretty much where the book is set. But all the characters are not taken from life. You will be relieved to know if you've read the novel.
There's a disclaimer for your family.
No, my family does not attack cars with sledgehammers or do such horrible things to each other.
Yeah. And so, James, will you you want which book do you want to talk about first? Because you have 2 and 6 more coming, as we said.
Yeah, well, I think we'll stick with River Sing Out just because I think that pairs well with Stacey, because it's also set in East Texas. With All Things Left Wild, my debut novel, I wrote this. It was this sprawling southwestern desert, mountains, big setting, big characters. And we were fortunate enough that it won the Spur Award and then also won the debut novel with the MPIVA, which I predicted before, but will predict again now that Stacey will win with Olympus, Texas, coming in, 3 months or 4 months, whenever they do that. You heard it here first. But I wanted to, with the second novel, kind of take all that wide open space and bring it into a more focused and almost like claustrophobic novel. And so that's what River Sing Out ended up being. And it's also in East Texas, also where I grew up, a little north of where Stacey grew up in Lufkin, Texas. And we were right along the Nature's River. And so that is the river in River Sing Out. And I wanted to try to highlight some of the lack of opportunity that we see in certain rural areas of the state and the country. And, you can live your life in a small community and never interact with certain parts of that community. And so, there were people in East Texas when I wrote this story that went, wow, is it really like that? And I was like, yes, it is. It's fiction, but these are all true things that happen. And so River Sing Out follows a young boy named Jonah as he basically tries everything he can to create a better life for himself and to kind of escape this cyclical poverty and violence that he was born into. And so, yeah, it was very personal just growing up in East Texas and meeting, some of these folks and having friends that went down some of these various dark paths. But I'm happy with how it turned out, and now on to the next 6.
The next 6 books. To keep himself busy. And just so you know, we'll have a little time for y'all to ask some questions, and you guys too at home, you can ask a few questions, and Brooke will let us know about that. And so hold your questions for a little bit. So what I want to say, May isn't here yet, but what I want to say about all 3 of you is, first of all, y'all really know how to hook a person right from the first page. Really, I don't read as much as people would expect you to read, but owning a bookstore, because that's like the fresh hell we live in. We're surrounded by books and we don't have time to read them all. They're just like fast, catch you, and you just automatically you're in the story. And not everybody can do that as a writer. So, is that something you have practiced, or you know when you're doing the story that's where it needs to start to grab people, or do your editors help you? How does that work?
I would say like all of the above, right? I went in when I wrote the novel, like one of the reasons why I liked working with Greek myth was I'm like, oh, a lot of stuff happens, really big stuff. And that will ensure that my book is not too quiet, right? Because I had friends, and you just hear like about the book industry, and it's like the curse of the quiet novel and how hard it is to sell a quiet novel. And I also realized as a reader, like I just really like books that have a lot of plot. Like I love characters as well, but like I do like things to happen, in the novels that I read. So I wanted to write something similar to that. But so I wrote something, and there was a lot of stuff, but it was originally quite a bit longer, not a huge amount, but longer. And my editor, who is brilliant, like she helped me make the pacing much better than it was in my original draft. Like, because it's like I knew the second half kind of slowed down too much, and I knew the things were bogging down, but I couldn't figure out how to fix it on my own. And she just had great ideas for making it feel kind of consistently swift through the whole novel, or at least that's what I hope.
Yes, it did, in my opinion. How about you, James?
Yeah, I'll second all of that. There are certain tropes of how to open a novel, and I'm not usually really into the like hook the reader with the first sentence in a way that almost seems gimmicky. Like I always use this thing like, she was a wedding planner, but how could she plan for murder? Like that kind of thing is just kind of, and people dig it, and we need all kinds of books. So I'm not bashing that by any means, but I love the balance. Like for me, I always try to open with kind of more muscular prose to show off those chops a little bit. And that was one of the things that I loved actually about Stacey's book is if you read the first page or two of Stacey's book when she's setting up the drive into the home and what all the setting looks like and the different flora and all that, I'm like, wow, this is going to be one of those settle in for like a literary slow burn, take your time. And then a couple more pages, and all of a sudden I'm going all over the place going, no, he didn't. Why did she do that? And so she was able to balance that, like have the beautiful prose and the stuff that I love about literature, and then also have me on the edge of my seat. And I think that's ultimately the goal, because as a writer, you don't want to lose the plot in the prose, but you also don't want to lose the beauty of writing itself and just become kind of like a generic storyteller. And so I think it's important to balance those things, and certainly from the jump, it gives the reader an idea of what's coming.
Yeah, well, I think you did that beautifully, and neither of you and May either are a generic writer in any means. So if you haven't already read their books, you're in for some treats, because they're three very different books. Which I love that you guys are going around as a trio to your events. I don't know if you know that started kind of traveling Texas, as a group of three authors, which we love. But your books are very different, and I think that's really interesting. We do author panels when we can sometimes, but we usually kind of stick to the genre. We've had some wonderful romance authors and some kid authors come. But I love that you don't quite line up with each other. I think that's really, really interesting.
It's funny too. I was looking at May's book again today, and even though we're very different, there's a different tone for each of these three novels. Like there's a lot of nature description.
Yes.
There's a lot of Texas in there, and I think it's just so many of us that are from Texas have such a love of the landscape. And then if you're from Texas, then you don't mind reading about landscape either.
Right.
You're like, give me the description of the piney woods and all those things.
Yeah, and particularly East Texas, because we all three, and it's weird the way it stacks up, because it's kind of like just along the East Texas, landscape. You got Stacey down here, and then me in the middle, and then May up a little more north in Longview. And so we kind of give you a full picture of the Pine Curtain there.
Yeah.
And you're right in that all of our novels are different, but it all kinds of touches on different, I don't know what you'd say, like maybe different classes of like the same areas. And so that kind of forces the tone to be a little different. But yeah, I haven't thought of that before, but I very much agree. And the only reason that we're traveling together is because I need them to help me and make me look good. And so I reached out to them.
James is so good at organizing and very proactive.
I reached out to them and like, please come help. But no, it's also been a privilege, because I think that when a lot of readers that aren't from Texas, kind of what Stacey was saying earlier, you talk to folks that are from Texas, and it's cowboy hat, cactus, desert sunset type stuff. And that was my first novel. I like played into that trope, and so I was like, okay, we've got to take this back to East Texas and show people that Texas is really big and has a lot of diverse culture, diverse geography, and so that's been a lot of fun to kind of not educate people, but just remind them, that we got a big state and there's a lot of beauty out there.
Well, I think, the landscape of Texas is such a part of the personality of the people who come out of Texas.
Yes, ma'am.
No matter which part you're from. I'm from what I call the dirty side of Houston, so where it's all polluted, and that's where our gas is, processed down there and for the whole country. And I think you did that really well. I think you, like Stacey, your book, the whole small town feel of it, you got that pacing so right without it being slow. And I'm still not quite sure how you did that, but you felt that it was a town that didn't have a lot of opportunity necessarily, but their people were rooted and had their lives, and had, productive lives there, but you could feel the smallness of that town.
Yeah, I think it's really hard. It's like if you grow up in a small town, it's not that hard to imagine city life because you just consume so much TV and books and you'll go on vacations to them. But sometimes I think it's really hard for people that were born and raised in large cities to kind of really understand what it feels like to live in a small town and how different it is to literally know everyone that you run into at Walmart. It's a different feeling.
And like a small town, but that has a Walmart. Because there's I think a lot of times people are like, well, if it's a small town, we've got the 4-way stop and that's it.
Yes,
but that's not how most Texas, small towns are. But yeah, I thought about this after we did an event, and I was trying to come up with like a good comparison for your book, and I finally, because I had it, but I just couldn't verbalize it, and I went and I was like scanning my bookshelf, going, "What? I know that there's a book. It's Larry McMurtry's Texasville." Right? And so, because McMurtry was always praised for being able to write Texans in a way that was true, but like wouldn't piss Texans off. Like he exposed their flaws and wrote about their flaws, but not in a cruel way or anything like that. It's just in a very honest and very truthful way that made you connect to the characters and connect to the town, and that's exactly and with the different with the affairs and the family back and forth in a way that felt urgent and real, but also like there was like a slight I wasn't necessarily I wasn't terrified that it was that everybody was just going to fall apart every
page. You didn't hate anybody really.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of likable characters doing unlikable things in a way that felt weirdly familiar to like a small Texas town. But yeah, I thought it was a great comparison, Texasville. So now I can tell people that when I say, if you like Texasville,
then you
read Olympus, Texas.
That's a really nice compliment.
It is.
Yeah, take that.
I remember because I think everyone my age and older like Lonesome Dove is like the uber novel of Texas. But I remember, so I saw that and loved that and read the book when I was younger, but then read Horseman Pass By in college and was like, it was the first thing I had read that felt like specifically Texan in that way. Like,
that asshole was 25 years old. He was 25 years old when he wrote that. It might be his best novel, at least in my opinion. It was his first one, and he was 25. That's so unfair.
No, I did not get started nearly that young.
No, same.
That's okay too, because people need role models, no matter the age, right? Okay, so we talked a little bit about the way you hook the readers, but what hooks you in thinking about a story? And kind of, we have a lot of writers and aspiring writers in our area, and a lot of them come and work here at the bistro and the bookstore and get their coffee and stuff, and we love that. And we're hoping to plan some things for writers later in the year, so stay tuned for that. But that's what they want, and that's what people want to know is like, what is your process? And I write too, so I know that the process is different for each person. However, there are some overlaps, and I think there are some things that can be offered to inspire other people to either say, oh, I want to try that, or that they just kind of, do a riff off of that and go their own way. So how does that work for you guys?
Sure, I'll start. I- for me, at least at this point in my career, it is just being really careful about that first commitment. Because now that I've written a handful of novels, I know how long it takes, and I know how much I know how much time and energy and emotion you're going to invest into it, and it is so deflating to make the wrong call and get it, which I've done a couple of times where I've gotten 30, 40,000 words into a manuscript and realized like this is not the manuscript for whatever reason, and had to just put it on the shelf or chop it up for spare parts. But that's tough, and so it cautions me when I first began to do a lot of research and whatever that means. So, if it's a historical novel, then a lot of historical research, but just a lot of soul searching in that. Is this what I want to come to work and sit with every day for the next year, 2 years, whatever, and that can be very scary. But once you got that, I think it's almost like a Netflix queue. You're scrolling and you don't know what to pick, but at the end of the day, if you pick something and just start watching it, it'll probably be fine. It's the indecision that I tell people. I've never had writer's block, but I've suffered greatly from writer's indecision.
That's a good one.
And so, but most of the time, if I can just trust myself to get going with something, as long as I check a few boxes in the beginning, then it'll be fine. Because after that, it's just the writing process, which is that's the fun part. The fun part is when you pick something and you get to dive in and it's fresh and it can go a million different ways, and you just get fired up about coming to work every day for sure.
So, Stacey, does it come like a germ of an idea, a question, a something visual?
It's funny, and a lot of my stuff, the novel came from this idea about mythology, but like a lot of my short stories came from locations. Like I would think this place is really interesting, and then I would think about the people. It's me there.
I'm gonna get my. You keep talking. I'm walking in front of the camera, people. I'm really sorry.
So sometimes the ideas come that way. I like kind of like thinking of my ideas as puzzles sometimes. Like how am I gonna figure out this puzzle? Which is why the mythology stuff was so fun for me. I was like, oh, how do you get Zeus to seem like what would he be like if he was in East Texas, doing things? What would he be doing? And so that's where I get a lot of the ideas. You make me feel better, James, about that beginning time and how important it is. I've been feeling beating myself up a little bit about how I'm working on this new novel, but like I can't just bust out the chapters yet. I keep dancing around it and I'm doing research and it's all very interesting, but I'm like, I should just start writing. But you're right. It's like, I don't think my brain yet thinks I've gotten, I'm not there yet, right? Like I don't have the voice there yet or something.
I absolutely get it. I mean, you get started with those things and I don't know how many, I've only abandoned a couple that were significant, but I don't know how many, like first pages or loose outlines I've said, oh, this is great. And then literally the next day, be like, no, maybe not. And, it's just kind of how it goes. But I love what you said about stories coming from setting, because setting is, wildly important to me in novels and short stories. But yeah, I never really thought about how much that actually impacted, like if you're there somewhere and you're seeing things and you just start to create a story just out of where you are, that's a lot of fun too, which this is supposed to be. So
yes.
I forget that sometimes. But it is a lot of fun.
It's not 100% fun, but sometimes it is fun.
So May, can you hear us?
Yeah. Hey guys.
Okay, we might need you to talk a little bit louder.
Yeah, sure. Is that better?
Okay. Yes. Can y'all hear? Can everybody hear? Okay, so we're all here, and I'm going to do a quick introduction of you because we waited till you were here to talk about you. Well, we talked about you a little bit, but not much. Okay, so May Cobb grew up in the piney woods of East Texas, as we were talking about, where both the Hunting Wives and Big Woods are set. After college, she moved to San Francisco to study Victorian literature for her master's, where she gravitated toward that era's detective novels known as sensation novels, such as Wilkie Collins's The Woman in White. May then lived in Los Angeles for a few years, where she worked for filmmaker, writer Ron Shelton and his wife, the actress Lolita Davidovich. I love her. I want to know more.
Awesome.
Okay, we'll talk about that. She lives in Austin with her husband and son now, where they enjoy traipsing around the area's beautiful parks. She enjoys napping, yes to napping, staring into space, making to-do lists for the to-do list that she has, shoveling cookies down her throat when writing a particularly difficult scene, and even when not, wearing PJs as often as she can get away with, and collapsing into bed at the end of the day with a great book. So welcome, May Cobb. We're so glad you made it.
Thanks for having me and having me virtually. It's just like painful to not be there with y'all. Hey,
But we
guys.
can do it again. Yeah, we'll do it again. Y'all can come anytime you want to. But we were just talking about how story comes to you as a writer and author. So could you tell us about well, do you want to talk about The Hunting Wives or My Summer Darlings? Which one? Which is not out yet. It's coming out soon. Whichever
Yeah,
one you want to talk about, will you let us know how that story came to you?
Yeah, so for The Hunting Wives, it was I actually got the idea because I was up in East Texas driving around the backcountry roads with my mom, and she started to tell me about in high school how like sort of the rich guys in her class would all go out on the weekends to the woods and shoot guns from the hoods of their giant cars. And one time she went and she didn't know like that's what was going to be happening, and that they were like shooting at rabbits and stuff. And I just, when she was talking, I could see like, God, that could go so wrong. And so I started to okay, can I write about something in the 60s? And then I got really like, I just didn't want to do any research, so I put it in modern day time and wanted to make it like an all-female shooting club. And so it kind of came quickly and from her. And now that I'm faced with writing another one, I'm like, okay, I need another idea. Nothing's coming to me yet. So
Do you have things that you do to kind of spur that along, or do you just wait?
I think, it's going to be due, so I have to spur it along. Normally I would just wait, but I think like I'm about to turn my next book in next week. And so once that's off my desk, I feel like I'm just going to try to read, watch TV, go on walks, kind of fill the well up so something hopefully will come to me. Hopefully. I might need to have a phone date with James and Stacey. And
That sounds like a great plan. Well, thank you for sharing that. And can we, while we're still talking about The Hunting Wives, can we talk about Colleen Devine Ellis for a minute, who did the little video? That's how we sort of met. We haven't met in person, but we met her online because our former book buyer, she was forced to move to Hawaii, so that's why she's no longer our book buyer. I know we feel bad for her, but Colleen was the one who did the Larkinell videos when the books would drop every week, and they were hilarious. And so she was so excited about The Hunting Wives. She had read the advanced reader's copy. She's like, y'all, this book is going to be so much fun, and it's going to be so big. And that was all her about, she was crawling through the store on her belly with a Nerf gun, and shooting things. And so May saw that on our social media and gave us a shout out, which we loved. So yeah.
It was just the best thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, it was so hilarious. It was so great. And my agent flipped out for it. And then they started chatting because she was like, Colleen's my new hero. I love her.
Colleen is awesome. And she when she comes back, we may try to just like hold her here or something. I don't know. She's going to have to come visit her mother at some point. So
okay, good. Yeah.
Exactly. So, okay. So first of all, I love talking to people about their work, especially if their work is writing. So thank you for indulging me.
Yeah, of course.
Conversation. So could y'all is this your day job?
Yes.
And Stacey?
At least temporarily until the advance money runs out.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
At
Yeah.
the moment, I have a little freelance work on the side, but yes, I feel very fortunate that I don't have to have a 40-hour-a-week job right now.
How about you, May? Is this your day job now?
It is, yeah. Like Stacey said, for now. So
Yeah. So Stacey, you're not taking on any editing? right now?
I'm keeping existing clients
Okay.
and doing a couple referrals. And somehow I wound up, I have two novels to edit this
Oh,
month.
wow.
So I feel very busy at the moment,
Yeah.
but trying to scale back. And I'm still teaching like some classes for the Writers League, but no 10-week classes I was teaching before.
Are those virtual still?
Yes, everything with the Writer League classes is still virtual.
So let's talk about them for a little bit. So if all the writers out there, this is what you need to know. We're telling you tonight. So get out your pen and paper. First of all, get on the Writers League website and join because it is the best $50 you're ever going to spend. Kid you not. I cannot say enough good things about that organization or the director, Becca Oliver. I adore her. We can talk about Owen Edgerton and how much we love him too, and Jody Edgerton, his wife. There's some phenomenal people involved with that organization, which was started by Sarah Bird on her couch with a couple of other people 40 years ago. So, which I just love that. And this is an organization, a nonprofit that serves the writing community, but you'd think it would just be for Austin, but it's not. People come from all over, actually the world now, to that Agents and Editors conference. The last time I was there were people from the Bahamas
Wow.
and some other places. I was like, really? So what I think is so interesting that people don't always know is what a great writing community there is here in Central Texas. And I thought that was true of all places until a couple of Agents and Editors conferences I volunteered at. People are like from Houston, Dallas, and they're like, we don't have anything like this. There's a lot of writers in other towns, but it's not a sense of community. Do y'all want to say anything about that? The Writers League?
I mean, I'll take up the rest of the night talking about how much the Writers League of Texas has meant to me when I was in politics and doing all these jobs that really my heart wasn't in, and I stumbled into one of the Writers League. They do third Thursdays at Book People, and those are absolutely free, and they're still doing them. They did them virtually, but I think they're back in person maybe now. But anyway, so you don't have to be a member. So even if you don't have $50, the Writers League can still help you out. But I stumbled into a third Thursday and met Michael Knoll, who was the program director at the time, and met Becca and just all the great folks there. And since then, I mean, just I do not have an MFA. I've never taken a proper writing class, but I did take Becca Oliver's query writing class. And if I hadn't done that, I very seriously doubt I would have found an agent. If I had not attended a couple of their conferences, I very seriously doubt I would have had any idea of how the publishing industry works. And yeah, I really kind of owe my whole career to them, and certainly to Owen Edgerton as well, because he was the first one to read some of my stuff and say, hey, get up here on the One Page Salon and read some of your work and meet some of these people. And he was the first person to blurb All Things Left Wild, my first novel. And just the community support. And Owen told me this because I kept point blank asking, I was like, why do you do all this stuff for me? Because I would do anything for him, but I'm usually not in the position to, because he's
because he's Owen.
Yeah, because he's Owen and he doesn't need help. But he said, I try my best to be a good literary citizen, because I remember when I was starting out, all the people that helped me, and I'm taking that to heart. And so, I don't tell people no, right? Just try to continue that legacy, and also Owen's legacy of being so excited about other artists and their work, whether it's books or film or whatever. He gets so fired up, and I think that's probably what I love most about him. And so I try to mimic that a lot, when we do these conversations, and certainly when we talk about other people's work, because there can't be too much of that.
So if you don't know Owen and you're jealous right now because you don't, Owen Edgerton and his wife Jody Edgerton are both writers. Jody started Typewriter Rodeo. If you've ever been at an event where they write you a poem on the old-fashioned typewriter, that's all her, and two friends, I think, started that with her. And then Owen he's a writer for TV, movies. He's a director. He's like the whole package. Between the two of them, there's probably not anything they can't do. And Becca calls them the mayor and the other mayor of the Austin writing community. So, and I fully support that, So, May, how about you? Can you tell us about your writing community and support that you've been able to garner help with?
Yeah, I mean, James really said it best. Like, I mean, everything he said, I could say again because it applies to me too. The Writers League has been and continues to be so instrumental. I think at first, let's see, gosh, 20 years ago, I wandered into the old offices there, and like they had a job bank where they printed out, jobs or whatever, and I got a ghostwriting job through there where I got to write like this businessman's biography, and it turned out to be a really great gig for me, and that was my first experience with the Writers League. But I mean, I've probably been to like 6 of the agents conferences, and I've been through a couple of agents, so it's really been helpful. And wow, like Susie Spencer, my good friend, the true crime writer, I met her through there, and Amanda Airward, and of course Becca's just tremendous, and as y'all say, the Edgertons are just amazing. Owen's always been a huge support, and Jody and Owen actually gave us water during the winter storm last year. So I think they even like loaned us a space heater. So it's kind of
Aww.
endless. Yeah. And that's just Austin. We moved away in 2020, and we lived in the Bay Area for 5 months, and I missed the community so much. I mean, everyone was missing each other because we were all hiding in our homes, but I was like, that and the wildfires is why I moved back. But it's like, you think that might exist somewhere else, and it just really doesn't. And it's, and like pretty much anyone I've wanted to maybe go have coffee with, they've said yes. And then, everyone just seems so down to earth and accessible. So yeah, like, wow, everyone should join the Writers League for sure. And yeah,
They didn't even pay us to say this at all. Not at all. But let's talk. So you talked about being stuck at home. So let's talk about the pandemic, because what I wanted to know, and maybe you guys do too, is like, how has the pandemic like changed your writing? Like, not just like maybe the process of your writing, but are you writing different things, or things coming to you that maybe you wouldn't have thought of, before the pandemic? May, you want to go first on that one?
sure. Yeah, I think it's for me, it's just honestly just been more challenging because my son is pretty much home with us all the time, and while we do have people come in and help with him, it's like I'm finding writing like an hour here, 15 minutes here, and it's just it's been more of a grind, but it's also been a really beautiful escape. So I think I would go bonkers if I hadn't been working on like my books, and so yeah, I don't know, it's weird. I haven't written about the pandemic, and I'm just pretending that it doesn't exist because I kind of feel like people just don't want to read about it, maybe, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, and I kind of feel like, being closed into the house, you're not really out living. So I'm just kind of thirsty for, like some socialization and stuff, so I can maybe hear some dialogue and different. It's just, yeah, it's crazy. I don't know. It's just weird.
How about you guys? Anything changed in that way?
Just piggybacking off of what May was talking about, I feel like so much of like inspiration and creativity is you filtering what you're absorbing in the world onto the page, and then you're suddenly not absorbing anything from the world except like what you're streaming on your television, which I've watched a lot of TV in the past 2 years. So I think it makes it a little harder somewhat to create. And then I used to be the kind of person that like I would go through phases and I would only want to write at home for a while. And then I'd be like, oh no, I only want to write out in the world. Austin has so many great coffee shops and library spaces, and I really enjoyed that. And I haven't done that, since pre-COVID. And so that starts to feel, I don't know. I feel like I would feel better in those other spaces. And then the last thing I'll say is I think for writers, it's made this problem where it used to be most people who were writing present day novels, if it's not a historical novel, it just exists in the now, right? And it might take you 10 years to write the novel, but it's just now. And COVID messes all that up because there's a, before COVID, COVID, and then, soon, hopefully, and after COVID. And you're like, what am I supposed to set my novel? Because I really don't want to talk about how no one can meet because there's another, we're at stage 5 again. So, yeah, it's not good for fiction, I don't think.
James, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that's pretty much it. I hate to admit it, but I mean, with the pandemic, not a lot changed for me because my wife and I were, when I wrote both of the first 2 novels, actually, All Things Left Wild and Rivers Sing Out, we were living in our travel trailer and traveling the country, but most of the places we stopped, we were off-grid and national forest or Bureau of Land Management campgrounds, and so the pandemic was just kind of more of the same for us. We did move back to our house in South Austin, but then we had our first baby. We had a daughter, and so that more than anything else has changed because that's a pandemic unto itself. And so kind of like what Mae was saying, it became this thing where I used to wake up, drink some coffee, read the news, maybe throw up, and then read some good fiction and just kind of go into the workday knowing that I didn't really have a time set. And now it really is like, my wife's like, okay, I've got her for 2 hours, get in there and write. And I'm like, oh, whoa, that's not conducive to creativity at all. But it's fine. And back to what I said earlier, like, this is fun, and we're so lucky to be able to do this, and the fact that we all get to do it full time for now, along with our little side hustles, right? I mean, that's when people ask me if I'm a full-time author, I'm like, yeah, sure, because everything has to do with writing in a way. I just today finished some luxury real estate copy for a real estate agency, for just to make like a couple $100, and that's the kind of stuff that I think that you have to do because we don't have salaries and we don't have guarantees or assurances, and the minute that we're not profitable for our publishers, they're pretty much done with us. And so we'll see how that goes. But for in the here and now, we all are full-time authors, and that is really neat, pandemic or no.
So I want to take some time. Does anybody in the audience have any questions for the authors this evening or online? And Brooke, if you'll tell, I can't read it from here, so if you'll tell us if there's one. Anybody in the room have a question? Okay. Let it bubble up. Are there some in the chat box? Okay. All right, y'all think on it then, because I have more questions. I came prepared. So, all right. So I had a couple of other things. Stacey, that book club kit on your website is gorgeous. like people should read the book for book club just for that kit, and then you'll love the book too. But that was, did the publisher do that?
Yeah, I will definitely pass that on to the marketing team at Doubleday.
Yeah, that's the best one I've ever seen. No offense to anybody else, but yeah, that's beautiful.
It's so fun, like, and that's much more common now too, that they know that like part of the market now for at least a certain type of books is book club picks.
Yeah.
So many people with their own book clubs across the country, and so now they're like, oh, well, if you want some questions, here's some questions you can talk about.
Yeah.
Here's a recipe or a playlist, and they're really fun. And some of the, with COVID, like I haven't been able to do very many in-person events, other than this lovely one here, and it has, one of the nicest things has been just dropping into Zoom book club meetings for 30 minutes. Just to chat with readers, and it's been really fun to talk to people who have read the book.
That was my next question: is where are you dropping in to talk to people? And so, what's the feedback you're getting from those book clubs? Because that's like people on the street. That's like you're going to find out for real.
I think when you're there in the room with them, they are. Yeah. Occasionally it gets a little bumpy, but for the most part, everyone's very, very nice about the book. But I think what surprised me most, and this is in the book clubs, but also like if you look at the reviews online, is that people are like, oh, I really loved the book, but I hated the characters. So there's a lot of anger at the characters and their choices, which has been very funny. Being like, well, they're great, I love them, and I'm like, oh no. So that's been the most surprising thing, is just how many people are angry at my fictional characters.
Well, they
I get a question from the virtual room.
Yes.
All right, Jordan asks, Stacey, can you tell us a bit about your next novel?
Yes, the one that I'm kind of dancing around and not getting quite into. I wanted to write something set in Austin because I've lived in Austin for the most part since I was 18. I came to Austin for college, but I've never written that much about it. Wrote mostly about East Texas. So it's set in Austin, and it's kind of inspired by noir mysteries, which is a genre that I've always really loved, like Jim Thompson and Raymond Chandler and all of that, and some Texas politics as well, because it's just, I think all of us feel kind of steeped in politics lately, but it's filtering into our lives in ways it didn't used to. So that's where it's at right now. We'll see what happens.
Is that set a contemporary setting?
You know, it's funny. I was kind of wrestling with that. It's set in two different time periods, and I think it's actually set. One part of it is in 2008, and the other part is in the summer of 2016, which means I get to avoid COVID altogether, which is very nice.
Even in your novels, avoid COVID people. You know, so yeah. Okay. Any other questions online?
I would love to hear about the novels coming out from James and from May, because I've seen May's the new cover for My Summer Darlings, but I haven't heard her talk about it yet.
And that cover is phenomenal. Yeah. So May,
good.
will you tell us about My Summer Darlings? Okay, but wait 1 second. So these three authors were so generous to come now, but they're kind of in a weird zone about some books are out, some are coming out, some not yet. So there's something for everybody, and then there'll be more later. So just know that. So May, go ahead. Tell us about My Summer Darlings. And I love that cover, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really happy with it too. The same designer who did the Hunting Wives cover did the My Summer Darlings cover, and I like how they're kind of similar with the graphics, and I don't know. I feel like she did such a great job, but yeah. So it's basically it's set over the course of a summer in a small town in East Texas, which is basically my hometown of Longview, which. For the novel I'm writing now, I just call it Longview. I don't know why I made up names for the Hunting Wives. Anyway, My Summer Darlings. It's about three lifelong best friends who they're pretty much at different stages of their lives. One's recently divorced. One is like a socialite, and she fears that her beauty's faded, and then the other one's more like a repressed housewife. And this mysterious, like, sexy stranger moves into town, and he's obviously wealthy. And so over the course of the summer, they each become obsessed with him. And it opens with like a woman dying in the woods, as most of my novels tend to. And but you don't know who it is or really what he's up to. And then you kind of, I don't want to give any of it away, but that's basically it. It's like just more bad behavior from adults and twisty female friendships and maybe too much drinking and backstabbing. It's home. So,
See, now everybody's hooked. And remind us when that comes out.
yeah, that's May 17th. So like 3 months.
Wow.
And you can pre-order it now, right?
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Yes, pre-order it.
And you can pre-order it here too. So we can talk to you about that later. So, okay. And how about you? You want to talk about the next thing coming out?
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
You,
So we just got word actually a few days ago that the third novel, Beast of the Earth, will be published October 11th of this year, which I was so thrilled about because we've had a novel a year come out since my first one, but it was kind of set up to where each novel was coming out during the summer. And if anyone has read All Things Left Wild or River Sing Out, they're not exactly beach reads. And it was like, so it was coming out at the same time as like the books with like the umbrellas and the sand and, all this stuff. And I'm just going, I don't know if I'm hitting the right market here. But the fall, right, is like, that's when things get a little darker, a little spookier, and this is probably my spookiest book, I would say, to date. And so Beast of the Earth is set in 1980s in the hill country, just during the Texas oil glut. So we had the boom, and now we're in the bust, and because I don't think it would be a James Wade novel unless everybody was sad and broke. And so I did want to give it a little more of kind of that noir, that murder mystery feel. And so early on in the book, a student is killed at the local high school, and kind of sets off a chain of events in which the quiet, unassuming groundskeeper has to go out on his own to try to track down the whodunit of it all. And in the process, that kind of awakens some demons from his past, and then he has to cope with whether or not he's willing to leave justice up to the justice system, or maybe take it into his own hands. And I'm incredibly excited about it. We'll have the cover probably within a matter of weeks from Catherine English at Blackstone Publishing, who did the beautiful cover for River Sing Out and All Things Left Wild. And kind of like what May was talking about with Summer Darlings and Hunting Wives, I like how the color palettes kind of play with off of one another. And so I'm really anxious to see what she's going to do with this third one, because she's going to run out of colors at some point, because we've got the 8 books. And so, I don't know how that's all going to look, but she's wonderful, and I can't wait to see it. And you can pre-order that here. So please do.
And so that's something people ask a lot too. You want to tell them, do authors really get to pick their book covers? You want to answer that question, because that is a question, a global question.
I don't know if it's different for everyone. I would think some authors probably have a little more say than others. For me, Catherine English at Blackstone is our designer, or my designer, and she gave me, for All Things Left Wild, she sent me, I want to say 6 to 9 different versions. We had a discussion about, kind of some thoughts or whatever. And then I let her do her thing, and she sent me several to choose from. And I chose the one that I really liked and was really excited about it. And then once it got over to the marketing folks, they came back and they were like, so here's the thing. We're not saying that you have to do this one. We're just saying we could market this one better. And so then I felt like that would be a really dumb thing for me to go against what the marketing people were saying. I do love this cover, but it was not the one that I initially picked. But then for River Sing Out, it was a no-brainer. She did the same thing, gave me several to choose from. That's the one I picked. The marketing folks loved it, and so yeah. I kind of have a say in the process, but if the publisher wants to do something, they will guide you in that direction to where I feel like I would feel like a squeaky wheel, and I'm not far enough along in my career to be the squeaky wheel on the roster. You know what I mean? So like, for instance, with the audiobook for All Things Left Wild, they sent me 2 or 3 different narrators and just a few clips from each. And they asked my thoughts. And I asked them, are you asking for my thoughts, or am I getting to pick? And they said, you do not get to pick, but we will take your thoughts into consideration. So I said, okay. And I gave them my thoughts, and I was very happy with the guy they chose. I would have been happy with any of them. They were all great. But for River Sing Out, I got a call one day from somebody at Blackstone I'd never talked to before and have not talked to since. I can't even tell you his name. And he said, hi, I'm a bigger boss than you need to talk to. And Roger Clark has just agreed to do River Sing Out. And so we've hired him, and you have no say in the matter. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. Because he was very excited. Like, he was giddy on the phone. And I was like, oh, that's so awesome, Roger Clark. I can't believe that. So we got off the phone, and I Googled who is Roger Clark. And I'm not a video game player since I was much younger, but there is apparently a game called Dead Red Redemption or Red Dead Redemption.
Oh, yeah.
And Roger Clark is the voice and also the motion capture actor for the main character in that video game, whose name now is Arthur Morgan is the famous video character. Anyway, Roger Clark has 200,000 followers on Instagram, and in today's publishing world, unfortunately, that kind of shit matters. And so they were very happy, to have him. And I think even if I had put my foot down and said, I don't want Roger Clark for whatever reason, I think they would have just patted me on the head and said, you're going to get Roger Clark. Anyway.
And it's Stacey, yours looks like a piece of art that somebody made for the book.
Yeah, they did it, which I didn't know that happened, because you hear these horror stories about, like, someone goes to a bookstore and the same, like, stock image is on someone else's novel that was on their novel from 5 years ago. And I didn't think they commissioned stuff, but yeah, I was really lucky. But listening to James's story, I think really the power in these companies is in the marketing department.
Yes.
Because I didn't have a lot of different covers to pick from, but my editor involved me, and she was like, send me the covers you like, you know, tell me what you absolutely don't want on the cover. And I was like, I would just like it not to have a trailer on the cover, because I feel like all novels of the South, they'll try and throw a trailer on the cover, whether there's a trailer in the novel or not. And I was like, no, like cowboy boots, maybe. And so originally the idea was that the cover designer and my editor wanted to do a painting that had the two dogs in the novel. So they're these really big mastiffs. And they were sending me the websites of people who just did pet portraits. So they're like, you like this style or this style. And they were literally going to hire a pet portraitist to just do a two mastiff cover. And I thought that was really cool. I love dogs. I was excited about that. They took that idea to marketing, and marketing was like, no. They're like, the dogs are not important enough in the novel. Everyone will just be confused. So then they found this illustrator, Ping Zhu is her name, and I had seen her work before actually in the New York Times, I think, doing illustrations next to book reviews. And they told her generally what they wanted, that they wanted a big live oak tree and the little house of the family in the background. And then they let me give some feedback. I was like, the color scheme, I saw it when everything was on fire in California. And the colors they were using in the background, I was like, it looks really apocalyptic, like the whole town's on fire. So they made it pinker and less orange, and they made the house white for me because I'm a literalist and the house in the book was white, and I wanted the house to be white there. But yeah, it's like you have some leeway, and I think if you really hate something, you can put your foot down, your agent will support you, and you can wiggle them away. But they ask for your input, but everything works better if you agree with what they want.
And I actually love how blunt they are, because I never know when someone's telling me the truth. Like in the editorial side of things, or like your agent, it's like, no, you're a great writer, and like you're so like let's pump you up. And I remember when we were doing All Things Left Wild, and I thought that I had more of a say than I did, and I was like, well, if you look at Cormac McCarthy's paperback Blood Meridian, it's really just a couple of tones of color, and there's actually no image, and I think it's just beautiful. And they were like, you just want a couple of tones of color? They're like, no, you're not Cormac McCarthy. They were like, why don't you? They literally said, why don't you go win like a National Book Award, and then you can do a couple tones of color. And I was like, yeah, that actually checks out. So.
And May, how about you? Because your book covers they have a distinctive style. So did they come to you and say, we want to do something that's not quite lined up with your genre all the time? I mean, I love it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's funny. They sent me something in the beginning, and they sent me like, I think 3 things, and it's vastly different from this. And it was, I didn't really like any of them, and I pretty much said I don't really like it. And at first I was thinking there might be maybe a Charlie's Angels silhouette of the women or the women's faces, and then they went back to the drawing board, and then they kicked out that cover in a couple of different colors and some other things, and I was just like, oh my God, that's it. That's because I don't know anything about design at all, and I could never in my wildest dreams come up with that, but I just think she's just so genius with it. So I think I had a say in it's actually interesting. There was another one I really liked too, but then marketing came back and they zeroed in on that one. And they said, this is the one. And they were right though. I can't even remember the one that I was like, I liked that one better, but yeah. And then later I was like, God, it was actually the publicist, Craig, and he's such a great guy. And I was like, I'm so glad that you gravitated towards that one. Because it's just so hard, because you have, like you said, it's not really like a cover from my genres. They're usually darker and moodier, and then of course my Summer Darlings is even poppier than that, and you're like, is it a thriller? So I'm glad they have the cocktail sword and one of the cherries on it, because that's what but yeah, anyway, yeah, I try to defer to them as much as possible, but I think Stacey's right. Like if you really don't like something, you can put your foot down but ultimately, yeah, they're probably the ones that are going to make the call. So, and they're usually right. I mean, like I said, I don't know anything about this stuff, you know.
Well, oh, go
I was
ahead.
gonna say I've heard stories before about like the cover. They pick the cover, it's settled, and then the big buyers like Amazon and Barnes and Noble, they have people in marketing that kind of look at that as well. And the people have had to change their covers because like the head buyer for Barnes and Noble was like, I don't like that.
Oh,
And
wow.
so it's all about like trying to please the people that know about sales more than anyone else.
Yeah, and then May's right in that the cover that I initially wanted for All Things I Bought, I'm so glad I didn't get it because looking back on it, I was wrong. And and to your point, one of the things they said was because it was like just tan and more deserty and just in darker tones, and they were like, look, we hate to say this, but you're scrolling through on Amazon or whatever awful place you buy your book, and you see a tiny little image,
Yeah.
and this dull, dark deal is just going to fly right by. You need something brighter and all that stuff, and I really could talk all night about about what is so disgusting about that, But at the same time, I do, want a career to last longer than a couple years. So I was like, yes, orange.
I think it would be interesting to like look at the covers from like the 60s, 70s, 80s, and now it really is. They think about what does it look like when it's a tiny icon. Because even if you're buying from Lark and Owl on your phone, right, it's still going to be a smaller icon. And they want, I think the colors have changed and gotten bolder maybe as a result, which I actually kind of like.
Well, we are out of time, but I just want to say thank you to all three of you for joining us. And Maeve, thank you for doing the big push for the end. I know that was a challenge for the evening. That happens sometimes. So thank you for making time for us. We really appreciate it. So I usually end evenings with people ask, how can we help writers and authors and indie bookstores. So what I tell people is follow these authors on social media, follow Lark and Owl on social media. Colleen is not on film anymore, but we're doing the best we can without her. And then also sign up if they have newsletters. We have a newsletter and it comes out about once a week. And sometimes there's always good information there, and sometimes there's a little surprise in there. So and then also come out to signings and readings and events with authors, and that's how you do it, and that's how they're going to keep this as their day jobs, and that's how we're going to keep our doors open. So you're welcome to stay and shop for a little bit while Brooke and I kind of get stuff tidied up around here. So let us know if we can help you find anything, or if you'd like to pre-order any of the books that we talked about tonight. So I just want to give a big hand to our authors. Thank you all so much. This was great. Yeah. So this has been fun. And that's one thing with the pandemic is we have these smaller groups. And so it kind of feels, I don't know, I like both. The bigger groups are fun too, but the smaller groups, I feel like, well, it's just we all got together in a living room or something. So anyway. All right. Well, y'all enjoy and stay tuned for the next Lark and Owl event. We will let you know about it. So May, I hope I get to meet you in person.
Definitely.
Very soon.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks, you guys.
You're welcome. Yeah, how to end that. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Jane.